This is the Lattice Training Podcast, where we bring you the best in climbing performance and training from the world's elite athletes, thought leaders, and coaches.
Welcome to the Lattice Training Podcast. Today's special guest is Jana Švecová. She's an absolute boulder machine, having climbed up to 8C and is currently trying Terranova, which is an 8C plus that could potentially be a 9A. Being such a beast, it's no wonder we had to get her on the podcast. We're going to dive deep into her background in competition climbing, why she took such a long break before coming into outdoor bouldering, and obviously all the training behind the amazing sense she's gone up to now. So make sure to sit down and have a listen, because this is a podcast you do not want to miss. So welcome to the podcast, Jane. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. You?
I'm very good. So before we start, would you like to introduce yourself and let people know who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jana Švecová and I'm a boulderer. I do bouldering now for 5 years. And before I had a short break, and before the short break I was competing and I was doing elite climbing, and I guess it didn't motivating me anymore. So basically that's why I had the break, and then I came back to bouldering and I got hooked really fast. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Let's take this in parts, because I feel like you just told me a lot at once. Not a lot of people know about you and how you are just an incredible climber and powerhouse. So instead of starting with your past and how your love for climbing began, I would love to start talking to you about what you're doing now, because a lot of people are not aware that you are literally projecting Terranova, which is one of the world's hardest 8C pluses, with the possibility of maybe being harder. We don't know. We have to wait for someone strong to go and confirm. But yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so yeah, basically as you said, like now my climbing is all about Terranova and training for the Terranova, because maybe I will go back a little bit, because when I started to bouldering, like those 4 years ago, I always set some goal for the upcoming year. And I started with it in 2019, and I set the goal to be the third woman in Czech Republic to climb 8A plus boulder, which I achieved that year. So I was like, okay, it's possible. Let's see if there's something else I can do. And I was like doing these goals every year, and here we are. It's the year 2024, and I was like, it would be really cool to have some long-term project. So I'm not saying that I set my goal to climb 8C plus, and I'm going to do it that year. But yeah, I was thinking about some longer project, and I originally wanted to project some 7C boulder, and then it somehow turned out to be Terranova, because it really suits my style. It's there are a lot of small crimps, and I can reach all the moves, and it's only 40 minutes drive from my home. So everything clicked, and I started the project Terranova, and I was doing some progress really fast. So I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And it became my dream project.
Damn, that is very impressive. I definitely would say having goals when you're doing a sport like climbing every year definitely helps. But I love how your mental game is like, okay, I have these goals, but I don't have to do them. They're just what I'd like to achieve, you know, because at the same time, when you have such big goals, it must be hard feeling the pressure to do them, or feeling the pressure to almost perform at a certain level. Like, I see it with my partner who climbs really hard. I see it with my friends. Like, sometimes you get so close to do something so epic, right? Because you're it's such a hard climb on itself that it must be hard when you go home and, the session went well, but not as well as you wanted. So how do you deal with that mental side when you're projecting on your limit? Because on your limit, not everybody climbs 8C plus or 8B or 8A, right? Like, I personally do like a 7C on a rare occasion, but just climbing on the limit for any grade can be hard on the mental side. So how do you deal with it?
Yeah, like with the previous goals, when I tried to send my first 8A plus, my first 8B, I felt much more pressure than now when I'm trying to send 8C plus, even though it would be first 8C plus women first 8C plus in the world. I feel less stressed about it because I actually don't know why. It seems like really challenging, and I'm having so much fun to try to reach that goal. So I don't even feel much pressure on me, to be honest, and I felt more under pressure when I tried to send like the first 8B, but I don't know why. Maybe it was also because when I tried to send the first 8B or 8B plus, I would be the first in Czech Republic, so I felt the pressure that someone can do it before me, even though it wouldn't take any motivation from me to want to send it. So yeah, I don't know if I described it correctly.
No, it makes complete sense, and I see where you're coming from. Like, even if people sometimes don't want to admit it, you do feel the pressure if you think you might be the first one to do something, because you do want to send it just because you think it's a cool climb. But when you feel people around you go, oh my God, you might be the first one to climb like this 8B plus or 8C or 8C plus or even 9A. Imagine the day that somebody goes, oh my God, you might be the first woman to climb 9A. Like, that's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, because suddenly, like, now I have to do this. Like, it's good that you take a step back and you still enjoy the process, and you take the moment as it comes.
Maybe as you were speaking, I just realized that maybe if even if I won't be the first who did the 8C plus, it would be still cool to be the second one. So maybe that's why I don't have that much pressure on my back with that.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like, it's not about being the first. It's just doing something that impressive is, like, really cool. And so you said you were the first female, so woman, in the Czech Republic to do 8B? Was it?
Yeah, 8B.
Was this this Nova?
No,
Nova
it
was
wasn't
8B
with Nova.
plus.
It was 8B plus, and then Will Bozy came to Czech Republic to try the whole thing, the Terranova, and obviously he started with the Nova because it's kind of like a intermediate goal, and then he upgraded it to 8C, which deep down in my mind I thought it might be, but I haven't done any 8C before, so I was a little bit afraid to grade it like that, so I was kind of leaving it open to have some other opinions, basically. But yeah, well, it was quite funny story, because to do 8B was a goal for the season. It happened quite early that year. It happened in May, and I repeated Adam Ondra's boulder Lattice in Moravian karst. But right after I uploaded the video of my scent on YouTube, there was the wave of comments that I used different beta and I had a different food sequence, so on and so on. So it got downgraded, which was a little bit frustrating, but whatever, these things happens. And then I had like another project which I knew it will be hard. So like 7 days later or something like that, I sent that project and I graded it 8B. So I had another one, and since I obviously had the power to climb 8B boulder, later that year I was able to send another 8B, which was, now I have to, sorry, which was Rustam Direct, also a boulder from Moravian Karst. And so I think I made it clear that I can climb 8B boulder back then, so it was cool.
I bet
So
that was so satisfying.
Yeah.
Like having all those people just leave you comments, which in hindsight, they weren't that nice. Just saying, oh, you can crimp harder because you've got small fingers, or you use different feet, or whatever. It's like, you did the line. You probably could have texted Adam and asked what the line was, because you guys know each other. So you probably did the right line. There was no questions. But all these people are like, no, because like Jane shouldn't be able to do it because of whatever reason. So it must have been really satisfying when they downgrade the boulder you just do, and then you go and in a short time you just send these next 8Bs and go, how about now? Am I an 8B climber now?
Exactly. And as you said, I obviously, when these comments started to go out that it should be downgraded because I used a different beta and stuff, I actually reached out to Adam, and he saw the video of my send, and he said that there's no doubt I did the 8B boulder. So, even though there were tons of comments that I did it differently and it shouldn't be 8B, this was just enough for me to hear from him that there's no doubt I did the Yaxitax boulder. So yeah. And as I said, I confirmed myself that I can do it with the next sense of the 8Bs. So this was a little bit hard way to go through this wave of not trusting comments. And it continued in the next years. But now I have to say that I feel like people got used to my sense, and they got used to that I can climb hard boulders, and they don't doubt it anymore. So this changed a little bit, I guess.
And they shouldn't doubt you, because Jane, you're freaking strong. These people need to realize that, you're strong. You've got the willpower, you've got the muscle power, you've got it all. With training, you're gonna keep climbing so hard. But it's good that you managed to talk to Adam and internalize that, I did it, no matter what these people say. And I think it's a topic that actually has come up a lot when I'm at home. Is the whole climbing is subjective, right? Yes, there are grades, but grades are given by people who climb these boulders. So technically, something that you do, you could think it's an 8A or 8A plus, and I can go do it and be like, for me, it felt harder. So different people are going to give different grades, and there's going to be a conclusion of what the main grade of it is, but it can still feel harder or easier for others. So I think it's a bit negative, having a crowd of people just come in and say, no, we're downgrading it now. After all those years of it always being 8B, of Adam Ondra saying it's 8B, you send it and now it's not. I think people need to like really take things into perspective and realize that grades are sort of subjective. But going on the grades front, so you had the season of doing a bunch of 8Bs and really settling in as an 8B climber. What was your first 8B plus, and how did you find it and put yourself into projecting and training mode?
If you're an engineer or a scientist, you love Formula One, you love cycling, you love learning about how new technologies are changing the world around us, then I thought you may want to listen into my new podcast, the Neil Ashton Podcast. We talk to leading engineers and scientists from around the world, hear about their life stories, hear about new technologies, and hopefully educate you and give you a better sense of how key things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, supercomputing are changing the world around us. If that sounds like it's something you might like, you should come and have a listen.
So I think, I definitely wanted to step up the game a little bit again. So I was looking for some 8B plus, of course, and like few years ago there was a girl. Still is. She's very talented ice climber. She won several World Cups in it, and she was also bouldering. She's not bouldering now anymore because of some health issues, but back then we were challenging each other so much, and I think that kind of made my progress even faster. And she was also projecting 8B plus. It was 8B/8B plus, and she was like, I think this boulder might suit you, so we should try it. It's a long roof through the undercuts and really small holds. So I visited the town where she lives, and I tried the boulder. It's called Prehistoric, and it's called Prehistoric, and it's 8B/8B plus, and I had a session on it, and it went really well, and it was a sandstone, so I wasn't really used to climbing on sandstone, but somehow I got hooked, and I think in like 8 or 9 session I was able to send it. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. Like, after a whole season of doing 8Bs, in 8 or 9 sessions, bow, you got an 8B plus, or 8B/8B plus, but still, like, really impressive. So when did Terranova come into play? When did you go, okay, I've done all of these 8B pluses. Like, when did you go, I'm going to try Terranova? And then within that story, tell me a bit more about Nova.
So it was the end of the year 2022, and as every year before, I was thinking about some new goals for the upcoming year, and I always achieved my goals in 1 year. That year when I was like, okay, this year I would like to climb 8B, and I wanted to project something. I wanted to challenge myself even more and see if I can have some long-term project. And I think I got to the point where 8C might be really challenging for me, of course. So I was like, okay, this is the right time to choose some boulder which will be 8C and have some long-term project, like not for 1 year, but maybe 2 or 3 years. We will see. And I ended up trying Terranova because one friend of mine visited me, and we were talking after we got back from UAE, and we were talking like what's going to be next, and that I'm looking for some project, and he was suggesting to try Terranova, and I was like, yeah, okay, but it's 8C plus, right? I'm looking for something achievable. So I went, he convinced me to at least see the holds, and so I went there to the crag, and I saw it might be possible because I really can pull on the moves, and I also did some links the very first day, so it was I got really excited, and I was like, okay, it's not 8C, it's 8C plus, but it's maybe even more challenging for me, and it will be definitely a long-term project. So I told myself to try to do it.
Now that's a big goal. But that must have been really exciting, and not just any 8C plus, right? We're talking about an 8C plus called Terranova that Adam Ondra took 11 days to do. I think there's an old video, like an old climbing video that shows him trying it. But even though he took 11 days, he did go to the crag a lot, right? Because he got really used to the moves, because in that crag, I mean, yes. I've been there, I've climbed with you. So hopefully we can explain these to the people listening. But the crag is sort of like a inclined board-like structure that has climbs going upwards, but also traverses, and then link-ups, right? There's a lot of link-ups. So if Adam Ondra was there trying all these link-ups and was doing all these climbs in was it like an 8-year period, more or less? Then he got really good at the holds. So 11 days to do an 8C plus for Adam Ondra after he's used to be in that crag. He might have not realized how hard Terranova really was, because, I mean, I'm nowhere near your level of climbing, but I couldn't get my bum off the floor when I tried to pull on most of the holds. And I remember when I was there with you and Will was having such a hard time. Like, Will Bosey was debating it being harder than 8C plus. We'll leave it for him to conclude what he thinks about it. So knowing that this is such a hard project now, he must really psych you up. He must really get you being like, damn, I'm trying such a hard project that Adam is done. So it's a classic. Then you've got Will Bosey coming in and being like, well, this is really hard. Some of the moves, you were doing them before Will Bosey could do them. How crazy cool is that?
Yeah, these are all things that got me psyched even more, to be honest. Also, the fact that nobody even tried to repeat Terranova is also something yeah, I understand why it's really hard, and it's really super small crimps, and just really hard to even stack the moves. So yeah, it's really motivating for me to knowing that nobody has ever repeated the boulder. I'm also really psyched that Will came to Czech Republic to try it with me, and it was really nice to project the boulder with someone else, because I of course I always climbed with my husband. He's also a really good climber, but we never had the same boulder that we can project, because we are so different. He's much taller than me, and we have never been on the same level to project the same boulder. So to be honest, it happened to me for the first time to really project something with someone else, and it was so cool to share the beta and discussing all the moves and all the micro betas. So yeah, it got me psyched even more, if it's even possible. So yeah, that was really cool.
That does sound quite cool. But let's go backwards a bit, because I feel like I did a tangent when I was getting really psyched about talking about Terranova. Because I think I first was asking was sort of when you first discovered Terranova, because your friends to also go there, it felt hard, right? What made you keep trying it? And then when did it click for you to do the link that is now Nova?
Yes, so I think it started from the session number 1 because we have some really strong boulders here, like Martin Stráník. He has done many 8C boulders, and he tried Terranova before because it's just challenging boulders, so why not to try it? But he said that it seems impossible for him, so that got me psyched. That got me psyched. And I was like, yeah, I can do some moves. It's not impossible. I also think I can do some links, and when I can do the moves in the boulder, I know that eventually I will be able to link them into the whole boulder problem. So I saw it's possible from the first day, but still it wasn't like the best conditions for me. It was really cold, and I'm used to more warmer conditions. So considering that I didn't have the right conditions for me, and still I was able to move in the moves, was something that like made me to train a little bit in the gym for the boulder and get back, and I saw the progression every session, which was really cool. Maybe about the Nova, and when I started to think about like doing it as a separate or as an intermediate goal in Terranova. So I was more trying to figure out the end section of the boulder, and I was thinking it would be nice if I can do the boulder from the second half to the end, and I was making some really good links. So I was thinking maybe I can add a sit start, and I can do it as a separate boulder. So yeah, that's basically how Nova turned out to be, like separate boulder, and it's the second part of Terranova, so that's why it's called Nova.
Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned before when you were saying this how with Terranova you decided to start training a bit more. Did you feel like you needed to train for Terranova because your training before wasn't going or getting you strong enough? Or did you suddenly go, I really need to up my training game for this climb?
Yeah, for sure. I knew that Terranova is beyond me and beyond my physical abilities. So I still need to work really hard to get to the point where I will be able to send it one day.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you've upped your game so that you can get stronger to get Terranova done. You've done a link up in Terranova called Nova. That was 8B plus, and now it's been upgraded to 8C. Like, you're on a rampage. You're like trying hard things. You've started training with Lattice, with us. I think you're with Coach Cam, if I'm correct. Like, you're really upping the game. Like, your training has gone insane. The other day, we were chatting and you're talking about how you've done a year's worth of improvement in a Lattice training plan in like 8 weeks, was it?
Yeah, 8 weeks.
Like, that is crazy how, you have you find the weakness with the coach and they just get you up to just being strong on it and like actually adding weights to that exercise now. Like, how has your time with Lattice been like? Run me through how the testing went and how you've spoken or talked or even just got your training, I guess.
Yeah, so I started to train with Lattice by the end of the last year, I guess. And yeah, it started out with the assessment testing where I did a couple of exercises and we find out what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. And it was quite surprising for me because there were some weaknesses I thought are actually my strengths. So, but yeah, of course,
I think that happens to a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm really strong, say, on my fingers. And then they test and they're like, this is my weakness?
yeah,
But keep
exactly,
going.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we found some weaknesses, and we are obviously not working on all of them, but just some of them that are crucial for the best performance on the Terranova. So as I mentioned, the shoulders were one of the weaknesses. And yeah, then we started to work really hard on it. Like I say really hard. It was actually quite a change for me because I felt like I'm not even training hard. Like I was always used to pull 100% on the fingerboard, and yeah, that's actually the biggest change from my previous trainings, that I was really used to pull really hard all the time. But with the Lattice training, it's different. I didn't have had to pull like 100%, but of course you need to do that to not to reach the plateau and stuff. So it all makes sense. But if you don't know this stuff, then obviously you do not progress as fast as when you know all of these.
Hey everyone, I have an exclusive offer for all of our podcast listeners. This is a 15% off any of our Lattice training plans, and all you have to do is at the checkout page of the website, when you put in your training plan into your basket, you apply the code of podcast15, and that will give you a 15% discount off that training plan.
So you get this training plan and you're expecting it to be like intense as always, and you're always like training really hard, and then you're like, oh, I don't have as much intense exercises to do or as much volume, like what's going on? And obviously you've got to trust the process. You've got to trust that the coach has your best intentions in play, and obviously the coach has all of the knowledge. Like your coach Cam, for example, has so much background in exercise fatigue. He's literally doing a PhD on it. So once you trust the process, it starts working out, right? Like it's crazy, the improvements once you get on a plan.
Yes, you are absolutely right. Also, even during the training, I felt like I'm not improving, and I was always writing the doubts to the coach Cam, to the messages, and he's always like super supportive about it. Like, yeah, that's normal. We are in this phase, and this is super normal to feel like this. And everything I said, like every doubt, he was like, yeah, that's normal. That's where we want to have you right now. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's great. And after I did the testing, after some time of the training, I was just really surprised about the results. So yeah, I can definitely say that you need to trust the process, and yeah, it was like a miracle.
Yeah, like training does end up looking like a miracle when you see the results. But I'm glad that Cam has got you sorted and he's actually listening to you as a coach and as a person. Because I feel like a lot of people sometimes question like how personal the performance coaching plans can be. And it's great to hear that, like, you know, you have doubts, you can text your coach, you you're not sure if training is going as well as you want, you can text your coach. Like, that one-on-one support is really important. But yeah, so hopefully your training keeps going amazing. But you told me once that if you weren't climbing, you might have gotten hooked into jiu-jitsu or volleyball or some sport. So now that we know a lot about what you're doing at the moment, and not just the hard climbs you're getting on, but how you're doing amazing in your training, tell me about the before. Who is Jane, and how did you get into climbing, and why not another sport? What was it about climbing, you know?
Yeah, so the thing about jiu-jitsu and finding some other sport, it was during the break I had before I started to bouldering. So yeah, it was like 7-8 years ago, and I had 2 years break, and as I said before, I was doing elite climbing, I was competing, and I somehow lost the motivation to continue with climbing in general. So I just stopped, and after a while I started to like feel bad about myself that I don't do anything, and I always been like super active person, and now I'm just doing nothing. It was quite relaxing for a few months, that I had plenty of times, and I really enjoyed that back then. But then it started to be a little bit boring, and so I knew I would like to start doing something new, and I kind of liked volleyball, and I was thinking that maybe I can join some team, and I can do something just for fun. Like, I mean, for fun means for everybody it means something else. For someone it means not competing, just doing it after your work 2 times a week and stuff. But like for me, fun is when I try really hard and I give 100%. So that's what I was looking for in the new sport as well. And I find out that it was impossible to get into some team when you are, I was 20 back then. So I was already too old to join some team. And even getting to the competitions was really hard. You had to go through a lot of tournaments and stuff. So yeah, I saw that that's not my way. And a friend of mine that got me hooked into the climbing, like when I was 7, she showed me the jiu-jitsu, because she also stopped climbing and she started to do jiu-jitsu. And it was actually a really good sport. I think it's really good for climbers in a way that we have really strong fingers and body core and hands, and in the jiu-jitsu you are all the time on the ground and try to grab the kimonos, and you have to have really strong grab, and so it went really well. I almost got hooked, but then I was like, yeah, I don't know, it somehow wasn't enough for me, and I was looking for something more. And then one day I just woke up and I'm like, what am I doing? The climbing is the only thing I can do, and what I want to do, it's super fun, and it's not like the same all the time. You have different type of climbing. You can go bouldering outside, you can do bouldering in the gym, or the parkour style, and or the lead climbing. So it's so I knew I'm going to go back to climbing. So I just realized that's the only thing I want to do.
Well, it's almost like you reminded yourself why the 7-year-old Jane started climbing, right? Like, for you, like you said, everybody has different perception on what fun is. But for you, fun is like like being competitive with yourself and not just trying your best, but trying to overachieve for yourself. So in a way, you try these other sports and they're fun, but they're not your fun. You know, like you didn't really like feed that little need you have inside. So it's cool that you went from being a competition climber, you know, then you take a break because you're like, this is not exactly what I want to do. And you try these sports and it's almost like they bring back that love for the sport, which is incredible, because I feel like that sort of weirdly happened to me, because when I came to university 5 years ago, God, it feels like ages away now, I was competitive climber in the Portuguese national team, and I was like, oh yeah, routes indoors every day, all day, you know? And then I get to university and I just didn't want to climb. I think I brought one pair of shoes just in case. And he was my flatmate and very good friend who ended up taking me outdoors bouldering. So not sport climbing and not indoors, outdoors bouldering. And I'm kind of scared of like falling on mats and pads. And that just like brought my love, because I think for me, fun is like just being outdoors. I try hard, but you know me, I need you and like Will to be like screaming at me for me to try really hard. But it's sort of that, isn't it? Like you almost have to take a tiny break and then try a variation to realize how much you love climbing. Like it's just such a varied sport and there's so many things you can do. But it's great that you got hooked into climbing and look how far you've come. Like it's incredible. But but anyways, how did you start climbing though? Like we keep going backwards, almost like a slow flashback. So who was that friend that brought you into climbing when you were 7? Like how did you even get hooked in the first place?
Yeah, it was and still is my best friend, and she was having tons of hobbies and I had none. And I wanted to spend all of my time with her, playing with her and do some silly stuff. And I was always like, oh, can you go to my place after school? And she was like, no, I have a piano class. So I went with her on the piano class. I was waiting for her after she finished, and then we can go home, play some games. And once I told her if we can go out again, and she was like, no, I have climbing with my dad, but you can come with us, we can do it together. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's try it. And yeah, from the very first moment I started to go with them every training. I think back then it was like 2 times or even maybe 3 times a week, so we were training quite often. And after a year or so, we started to go for some competitions. So we were competing. Competing together or against each other for quite a long time. And yeah, that's how it evolved. Like I kept climbing for next 15-16 years. She stopped climbing before me, then she got to the jiu-jitsu, and I continued for a little bit, then I took the break, and I again tried the new sport with her. But at that time I didn't get hooked on jiu-jitsu, but I got back to climbing.
That's a pretty incredible story, isn't it? Basically, like this friend, without realizing, really influenced your future and showed you this sport that's just been amazing. So now that you're an outdoors climber, I'm aware that you do not like climbing in the cold. I personally don't like climbing in the cold either. I just don't get any feeling in my little fingertips. And I think you agree, because every time I was in the Czech with Will and you and Martin, Will has a fan. You had the heater. Let's just start there, right? So has it improved? Like, have you gotten better at climbing in the cold? And then after that, like, how has it been dealing with weather conditions? Because I know you've also gone on a few trips that have gone a bit south because of the weather?
Yes, so I think it definitely got better throughout the years. I got used to the colder conditions because I obviously started to climb harder boulders, and so I knew that I need to get used to colder conditions because anyway you can't climb like some harder boulder in 25 degrees, even though I feel most comfortable in 25 degrees on the sun. It's just you are sweating and on your fingertips, and it's just impossible. So I had to get used to it, but the real breakthrough happened this winter, where I was able to climb even in December, and that's also when I sent the boulder Dune. And I think it was a little bit mix of everything. Like the boulder is 5 minutes away from my home, so I could get warm up at here in our apartment. So I was already like warmed up my fingers and my body, and I just came there and I knew that I need just some little more warming up my fingers, and I can do straight to the boulder. And also we were looking for some ways how to make it easier for me to be in the cold conditions, so I also started to take to the rocks with me the gas heater, which is really cool because you sit in front of it and it feels like even though when there's 3 degrees you can sit right in front of it only with your t-shirt. So it's also really cool. Yeah.
And then when you went on trips with your husband Martin and you guys were in like Switzerland and Italy, how did you deal with the weather conditions? And, you know, when things got a bit not great, how did you deal when, you know, you take all this time off to go on a trip and then you can't really climb because the weather just doesn't let you, or you fall ill? Like, what happens when, you know, you can't go indoors because your projects are outdoors? Like, what is your mental game around that?
Yeah. So, like, to be honest, I'm still quite battling with myself to going on some longer trips because I don't know why, but I don't feel really comfortable going somewhere for more than 2 weeks. I'm still trying to figure out why is that. But of course, so yeah, when you just mentioned that we were in Swiss and we were there for 1 month, I was feeling sick all the time, and I think it was because of the distance, or I don't know, I just couldn't get used to be somewhere else for such a long time. So that's the first part of my mental game that I have to like get used to it in my head. And then there's the second thing, and that's the weather conditions. Yeah, so like when we were in Swiss, there were definitely some days when it was really bad for climbing, like the conditions were overall it was too warm. So it's quite okay with me, but Martin was really suffering because his fingertips are sweating really bad. So you need to find some ways how to do it. So for example, he was climbing at the evening and maybe later the day, and for me it was okay to climb during the day. But actually this was the first year when we agreed that we have to start going to the trips later the year. So maybe like November would be better than August, because we always went to our projects when it was like the warmer conditions, because we didn't want it to suffer in the cold, but it's just not the way how to climb something hard.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? It's, once you know what the best conditions are to climb, you really just have to put some time aside and really just aim to go when the conditions are the best. Like, something I see Will deal with a lot is there's only like 4 months of winter, or if that. And from those 4 months, half of it's rain. So Will's like, I've got all these projects and I only have this time. So you might have to deal with that soon. Hopefully you have more luck than him, because the rain seems to follow him. But also, even if you are sort of more at home during the hot time of summer, like you said, you've got crags all around you. Like, the Czech Republic has so much climbing, from trad to sport climbing to bouldering. And how do people not know about this? How is it that there's such amazing climbing and you barely see any like climbers going? Like, I haven't seen anybody, obviously, other than you or Adam, really post about it, but you guys are from the Czech, like,
Yeah, I think it's because when I will focus just on bouldering, I think we have a lot of caves in Czech Republic, so I think it's just not that aesthetic like the boulders in Switzerland, where you have a big boulder just standing alone with the nice surrounding. Like, here you really have to be in the cave where it's cold and stuff, and it's not like super super nice around. But I think we in Czech Republic think we think it is nice, so that's why we like to spend a lot of time there. And thanks to Adam, we have a lot of hard projects there. And also in Czech Republic there are maybe a lot of like boulders and rocks that we have a lot of rocks here, but it's forbidden to climb on them. So that's why when we have some crag which is allowed for climbing, there are like tons of variations and ways how to climb it. So yeah. And also the Czech sandstone is really nice, and I think that a lot of people knows about it, and we have there's a lot of traffic on the Czech sandstone, but of course it has some tradition, and it's in my eyes it's really dangerous. So I have never tried like some proper sandstone route because I want to live my life and I don't want to die now. But maybe I will get to that later.
Yeah, maybe one day. But I think more people should give the Czech Republic a chance and actually go and climb there.
That's really nice to hear. And I think that when I compare the limestone from Moravian Karst with limestone from some other areas, I think the limestone here is like really slippery, and you really have to like get used to the style of the climbing. So I was really surprised that you said that it's a really good limestone, because I more often hear some different opinions.
Yeah, maybe people are just not super used to like the different styles of limestone, because like where I grew up, the outdoor sport climbing crags or sea cliff limestone, they're like super slippy. Like if you think Moravsky Kras is slippy, like the Portuguese sea cliffs, like, who was it? That French climber who, what's his name? Well, Sebouin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Hopefully I'm correct. He went to the sea cliffs, right? And he had an amazing time, and he like put up some really cool climbs in the various cracks. But I bet you he used so much chalk, because whenever you go there, it's just so slippy, and it's not even slippy like what you're used to. It's like a tacky feeling on the rock, because you've got the sea just going against it all day. You've got to wait for the tide to go low for you to even climb there. So I just find that, yes, the quality of limestones can be different in different countries and different crags, but the climbs are good. When the climbs are good in my head, I get psyched, right? And it's always going to be different. There's always going to be people who prefer granite or grit or sandstone or limestone. I mean, I really like Moravsky Kras, but is that your style? Or what is your favorite rock type and hole type and just incline, slab? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so Terranova is 100% my style. I think it would be even better if it was in 40-degree overhang and it was just creams going upwards. Then it would be like ideal. And in general, I like super small creams. I have small fingers, small hands, and it suits me really well. And also I have just +1 ape index, so I think I'm really good in undercuts. So it's also one of my favorite. And yeah, I don't really like the pockets because I'm so scared to get injured. So I think I have done just one boulder problem with the small pockets where you really have to use like only 2 or 3 fingers. And it was when I started to climb, it was like literally my first trip outdoors, and I flashed the 8B plus boulder called Fingers Traverse. And I think ever since then I haven't climbed anything that have like small pockets on 2 or 1 fingers. So yeah.
Well, that is fair enough. You're in my sort of game then, going for like hard, crimpy things. Well, thank you so much for coming today and for having a chat with me. This has been absolutely amazing. I hope that for all our listeners, they've enjoyed going and just talking about you, really, because you're just absolutely incredible. I still can't believe we got you to come to the podcast today. And yeah, thanks so much for coming, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah,
It was a
thank
pleasure.
you.